Welcome back to another opportunity to simply show up to this space as our most authentic selves, who we truly are and who we truly want to be, and leaving those masks and leaving all of the conditioning that's no longer serving us at the door so that we can truly live in the peace and the power that comes from being connected to ourselves. And that's everything that today's video is about. It's about really bringing that authenticity, bringing this core self into our everyday experience. And today's message to fulfill that mission is simply about one main perspective that can radically shift our experience and our relationship with anxiety. And that one perspective is, that one core message is that anxiety is happening for us, not to us. I'm going to repeat that again because this has been radically transformative in my own experience. And so I really have to emphasize it here. Anxiety is happening for us, not to us. And so what I truly mean by that is that anxiety is simply a symptom of being disconnected from that core authentic self that lives within us. So anxiety being a symptom is very similar to a cough or a headache or a fever being a symptom for something else that's going on within our body, like having the flu or having COVID or having a cold. We have symptoms that point to something else that's happening beneath the surface. And so the same thing is with anxiety and oftentimes even depression, where these experiences are actually just symptoms of us being disconnected from ourselves, from our core. And so you're probably wondering to yourself, okay, well, how did I become disconnected? Why did I become disconnected? Why am I not just my core self now? Why am I not just my own truth right now? And I'm going to pop this visual back on the screen that I have shown many times in the past. And this is a diagram that shows the difference between our core self, that truth, our own truth of who we are, in comparison to our conditioned self. And the conditioned self, we'll start there, is the set of beliefs, perspectives, habits that have conditioned us to view the world a certain way, to show up in the world a certain way. And that conditioning, it comes from our parental figures. It comes from our family systems, our schooling systems, authority systems, society, all telling us how to be, what to bring into the world, what to create in the world. And that conditioning is coming from all of these outside voices and experiences. And also within that conditioning, we can have traumatic experiences that maybe might produce fear for us. And as a result of having these experiences, we end up becoming disconnected from ourselves, maybe because it's not natural to us because we've had this conditioning, or maybe because when we start to become more of ourselves, we might have some fear bubble up. We might have some pain bubble up to be ourselves because maybe in a past circumstance or experience, we were taught that being ourselves is bad, maybe by a parental figure, a teacher, whatever it might be. And so this conditioning will often lead to a disconnection with who we truly are inside. And that inside is our core self. And the core self is really the being inside of us that knows exactly the way that we want to show up in the world. It knows exactly what we need to feel at our best, to be our best. It knows what we want to bring into the world, how we want to express ourselves, the way that we want to show up in work or relationships, whatever it might be. And that core self, when we live there, it's a much easier experience to go about the world because we are connected to our intuition. We are connected to our inner wisdom, and therefore we can meet our needs and live our wants and go about life from a much more centered, peaceful, and just overall powerful way. And so this distinction starts to paint the picture of how we could have been disconnected from ourselves and where that anxiety is really coming from. And so I will give just an example of my own life where this really starts to illustrate what it might look like or feel like to live in the conditioned self versus our core self, right? So I had an experience about 7 years ago, maybe 8 years ago at this point, where I got the opportunity to be a marketing intern at a medical company. And I would have to go in Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., and I would have to sit there and I would have to take pictures and do email marketing for these used medical equipment scopes that we would end up selling to hospitals. I had to make all the marketing material, take all the pictures, and I would show up there, and as I would sit there, I would just feel like I was losing my vital life energy. I would feel depleted, I would feel fatigued, uninspired, and I started even to become anxious because I felt like I was losing out on another part of life. I was feeling disconnected from myself, and I didn't feel like I was truly myself when I was living this experience, when I was going about this part of my life. And soon enough, I decided this isn't for me. I got to get out of here. I did. And slowly but surely, I made my way into making YouTube videos and certain self-development practices. And as I started to do that, I felt really alive. I felt excited. I felt inspired. I had a lot of energy while I was doing it. And so then I followed that through, and that felt much more like myself. It felt more fulfilling because it was something that I truly wanted to do. And so this starts to depict the differences between what it might be like to live in the conditioned self, where we kind of know something's not right, this isn't meant for me, this isn't fulfilling, and therefore we could start to shift into something that does light us up, and we could start to recognize where the core self is and what illuminates us, what we do want, what we do need. And as we can recognize when we are living in the conditioned self, where the anxiety is coming up, where those that experience of living in our head or living in a fearful place starts to arise, when we have that awareness, then we could start to peel underneath what is causing this anxiety. And so my explanation around the marketing and that job is a very simple experience, sharing I just didn't like that job. However, sometimes we could be living in the conditioned self, and that anxiety that comes with living there could be pointing to something deeper. And so an experience for me is I was experiencing a lot of anxiety living at home, and in particular in my relationship with my mom. And so when I would have certain conversations with my mom, there would be a lot of anxiety triggered. I wouldn't be able to communicate myself the way that I wanted to, and it ultimately led to me just losing my power and getting caught up in the negative feedback loops that often come with living in our heads and living in that anxiety. And so slowly but surely I was able to journal on this. I was able to go to therapy on this. I was able to do coaching on this. And I slowly was able to unpack this down into understanding that I had certain experiences with my mom that were unresolved, that ended up creating a lot of resentment within our relationship that led to my anxiety and to my easily being triggered within that relationship. And that, again, that anxiety, that trigger was a symptom to something that was deeper, aka that unresolved emotion that was making it difficult for me to connect with my mom, which is a very important relationship to me. And so this is why the anxiety is actually happening for us, not to us, is such a beneficial way of going about life, and really being able to recognize that the anxiety is a friend of ours. The anxiety is trying to help us. It's how we view anxiety, how we perceive anxiety, that can often determine whether we suffer or whether we use it to our benefit, right? And of course, anxiety in general is a painful experience, but we can create more pain or less pain depending on how we respond to it, how we decide to consciously go about it. And so I'm just going to offer one tool, one practice that can really benefit our ability to respond versus react, to become aware of when we're living in the conditioned self versus living in the core self, and to gather the information that anxiety is trying to share with us without reacting to it. And that is meditation. Now, I talk about meditation a lot on my channel, and that's because it's so beneficial in so many ways. And here, the reason I mention meditation is simply because what meditation trains us to do is to sit back and witness what our thoughts are, our emotions are in our body without getting lost in them. It allows us to see the thoughts and the emotions as just a television show on the television while we're relaxing on the couch. We know that we're not the movie. We know that we're not the television, and we're the person watching them. And so when we could recognize that we are not our thoughts, we are not our emotions, it makes it much easier to see them and just see, okay, maybe why is this coming up for me? Why is that coming up for me? And when we could have that space in between ourselves and what our experience is with these thoughts, with these emotions, we could start to understand, why is it coming up? What is it trying to tell me? What is it pointing to that might benefit from some more attention, some more love and care underneath the surface? AKA with my mom, if I got lost in the emotions, if I got lost in the thoughts of interacting with my mom, I would have never been able to see that actually underneath there are some unresolved emotions that just had to be processed, that had to be seen, that had to be dealt with. And then I was able to move through that. Now, that anxiety has gone from like a level 7 out of 10 to like a level 2 or 3 out of 10. Of course, it pops up sometimes here and there, but I know how to move through it now because I understand it. And so this is really a perspective that has radically shifted my ability to go about my journey with anxiety, because I know that anxiety is actually just helping me. And I have surrounded that perspective with the tools to really understand anxiety and to come back to my core self out of that conditioned self, right? Out of the habits that are no longer serving me, the beliefs that are no longer serving me, and really come into underneath what my truth is. And as I resolve that emotion, and I resolve that conflict, and I resolve that anxiety and find out what's going on there, slowly but surely, my core self just starts to radiate more energy that way and more light that way, and it just starts to illuminate. Whereas that energy just builds inside us, that core self expands more and more the more that we tap into it and live from it. And that is where the internal wisdom and peace comes from, because we know what we're doing. We know why we want to be doing what we're doing. We know what we need when a challenging emotion comes up. We know how to comfort ourselves because we are listening to this voice inside of our gut that is intuitively telling us to do this or to do that. And that is where we go from a lower level of energy to a higher level of energy, when we really honor ourselves, right? That self-love that people talk about, it's connecting with our core selves, making time for connecting with ourselves so that we could show up the way we want to instead of the way society is telling us to. That's a big one. And again, I share these videos for you, but I also share them for myself. These are the things I journal about when I'm going through challenging times. And I invite you to share any of the pieces that really landed with you in the comments below so we can have a conversation on them, really be able to maybe understand some pieces more so that we can bring this into our experience, embody it, and really evolve as a result of it, and have that, that radical shift as a result of it. And I always just look forward to talking to you. And also, if you'd like to keep it private, you can reach out to me on Instagram. We could have a one-on-one conversation. And you could check out my Instagram either here or here, wherever it decides to pop up. Otherwise, if you'd like to practice meditation, I hold a donation-based meditation class every Sunday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern. And this class is about 10 to 15 minutes of meditation, a little bit of education in the beginning, and then a little bit of community interacting with each other afterwards so that we could really learn, grow, and evolve together, elevate our consciousness, feel better, and go about our day and about our week from even more of a place of power. And the last thing I'd love to share here is that I offer one-on-one coaching now. And as a result of this one-on-one coaching, we get to take all these practices and these tools that I talk about in YouTube and really bring them together in a personalized way for you to feel like, okay, this is how I want to bring this together and this is how I want to bring it forward. And that has been a really empowering tool set for me is coaching. So meditation, Instagram, coaching, all the links are below, and I look forward to talking to you even more so that we could learn, grow, and evolve together and just elevate our consciousness to enjoy what life offers us with that much more energy, that much more joy and happiness. I look forward to seeing you in the comments on Instagram or in the videos that are ahead. Much love to you.